Hello and welcome to This Inspired Life. My name is Andy Taylor, and in this video I'm talking about possibility and impossibility. And the reason that I wanted to talk about this today is the fact that I just woke up this morning and I had this thought go around in my head about how strange it is that we've come so far as a species and we've achieved so much, and yet there are still people who will categorically declare something to be impossible, even though there is evidence to prove that in previous years, decades, centuries, what was considered to be impossible is now commonplace. It was just, and it got me thinking about a few examples of that. The obvious one, and one that I use quite a lot, and I've been exposed to in my training in personal development and coaching, is the Roger Bannister example with the 4-minute mile, which I'll go into in just a little moment. But the other one that I thought about, which I thought was kind of cool, was the fact that it's commonplace now. It's kind of incredulous. It's incredible to believe, actually, that in the 1960s, NASA was sending men into space, and whether or not you think it's a conspiracy theory about them landing on the moon, that's for a different day and a different channel. But the fact is that there was, NASA were using computers, the best, most extreme examples of computer technology of the day, and they were sending rockets into space. Right now, it is incredible to me, and it's sobering to think that the majority of us in the Western world are carrying around mobile devices, be they telephones or tablets or iPads or iPhones, whatever you've got, that possess more computing power in those little tiny pocket devices than NASA used to send men into space. Kind of sobering, really, when you put it into those terms, isn't it? Now, whether those statistics are actually 100% accurate, I don't know. I'm just going by something I read when I was researching for today. And it just seemed like a really cool thing to reference. And I'm fairly certain that if it's not accurate, it's going to be damn close, because I know for a fact that technology back in the early days of in the 50s and the 60s, computer technology was fairly primitive by today's standards. Everything is by today's standards. The automobile, the car from the 1960s is fairly primitive when you compare it today. I mean, there's no comparison between a 1950s Ford Mustang or Ford Thunderbird or a Ford Cortina or a Ford Escort, whatever you've got. I mean, I'm not a big historical car fan, and you compare it to a modern day Tesla, the difference is going to be night and day because of the technology increasing. Yes, the basic principles are the same, in as much as you have a propulsion unit, you have a navigational unit, the steering wheel, and you have 4 contact patches on the road, the wheels, the tires. Okay, but the technology has moved on, and so do we. I mean, our understanding of our own existence, our own consciousness, our physical limitations have changed so much in that period of time, which is where we get to the Roger Bannister example, which is 1952 in the Olympic Games. Roger Bannister had what could possibly be described as a failure in his performance at the Olympics. So much so, I mean, this is from the Wikipedia entry, so much so that he considered he just basically took a break for 3 months to consider whether or not he should give up running at all, completely. Now, fortunately for us, he didn't, and his example stands the test of time as being like the ultimate example to demonstrate the whole point of possibility and impossibility, because what happened with the Roger Bannister example is the fact that no one had ever achieved a sub 4-minute mile, and people researched it, the possibility of it, athletic sciences looked into the possibility of it, and they declared categorically that the human body could not withstand the stresses involved in doing such a thing. And there were some, fairly colourful stories have been reported. I'm not sure whether these are true, but I'd love to think they are, where the scientific community of the day even went as far as to say, that if you attempted such a feat, your body would explode. And I kind of think that's awesome. If it's true, that would be absolutely brilliant. Not literally, it would be very unfortunate, but it's just kind of funny to think about it. So when he did, I think it was September 1954, where he actually achieved his 4-minute mile, it was revolutionary. And it did one very key thing. It proved possibility. And it proved to the entire athletic community that what was once considered to be so far out there and so impossible that you would potentially explode if you tried it, he proved that it was possible. So there's this one man dedicated himself and his training regime to achieving this one goal, which is to run a sub 4-minute mile. And he's also a really good example. Roger Bannister is a really good example of results in advance. Something else, another concept that I'll be doing an entire video about shortly, and I got the hiccups for some reason, just developed them. Excuse me. And the results in advance is basically that Roger Bannister, along with modern day athletes, Michael Jordan, Michael Schumacher, they go through a practice of rehearsing in crystal clear, vivid visualization the results they want to get in their head first. So Michael Schumacher is quite famous, and Mika Hakkinen as well, for that matter, two kind of contemporary racing drivers, Formula One champions. They used to shut themselves away prior to a session, whether it's practice, qualifying, or a race. They used to shut themselves away and have no distractions. They used to post somebody on the outside of their trailer door so that nobody would get in and disturb them. And they used to sit in complete silence, and they used to sit down, and they used to just put ear defenders or earphones on so that there were no noise at all. And this is from an autobiography and an interview that Mika Hakkinen did, and it was like an autobiography of Michael Schumacher and an interview with Mika Hakkinen, and they both said the same thing. They used to just shut themselves away, cut off all distractions, and then rehearse every detail of every single lap, of every single circuit. They'd have the cornering down to a T. They'd know exactly when they were changing gear, exactly when they were applying the brakes, what the brakes would feel like, what the turning would feel like, what the grip would feel like. And I don't want to go into too much detail because, like I said, I want to do another video probably tomorrow about this. But they, along with Michael Jordan, used to practice free throws in his head, and they would be perfect. So he would practice perfect free throws in his head, and his percentages shot up when he started that. And Bannister was no different, because Roger Bannister used to rehearse and practice in his head at whatever track he was at, the exact feel of how it felt under his feet, the wind, the resistance, his muscles, his body, his, the arc of his back. Every single detail he used to practice in his head first. And when he achieved what he did, the sub 4-minute mile, it encouraged an entire community, an entire profession, or professional sport, if you want, that what was seemingly impossible prior to that was now possible. One man had done it, so anyone else could do it. And that's the thing, and that's that's what I want to talk about in detail about possibility and impossibility, is the fact that we have all of these examples of something previously being described as impossible, and then somebody goes and achieves it, and it's suddenly possible. What changes? What changes in us, right? That's a question that I have, and that is the fact that, so what is it? And it's a question I'm sure most of you have too. It's the fact that, so what is the difference between something being conceived as or perceived as being impossible one minute, but then we hear of or we witness somebody doing it? Something goes like that. And all of a sudden, what we were so adamant was, no, I can't do that, that's impossible. We're now thinking, fuck yeah, I'm going to do that tomorrow. And it's just a shift that happens, and it's just a massive shift, and it's so important to acknowledge it and understand it and celebrate it, because it's a big achievement. It's a huge step in our psychological development as people. And the whole thing with possibility is the fact that we live in a world where our entire experience of life is coming from inside us. So everything that we are experiencing in life, we are not experiencing the thing, we are experiencing our thinking about the thing. You witness something, you witness a beautiful horizon, a beautiful sunrise or a sunset with the woman or man that you love. And you are experiencing your thinking and your feeling of that situation, of that event. And it's like the sun sets every day, so what's so special? What's special is your experience of it, because your experience is made up of your emotional response to it and your psychological, your mental response to it, your thinking about it. And there are so many components to it. So the person you're with, for one, that's going to make it extra special. But again, it's all coming from inside of us. We create our own experience of being alive. We create our own experience of life and living. And going back to possible and impossible, it's no different, because anything that we perceive as impossible, that is only coming from in here, right? And as I said at the beginning, it's only coming from in here, from our limitations, our perceived limitations based on our own limited experiences up until this point, our limited understanding up until this point. And a critical one, which is something that you're going to be familiar with by this point if you've watched my other videos, your awareness. Because when you expand your awareness, when you grow your awareness and you see more of what there is to be seen, because as you see more, as I explained in a previous video, as you see more, become aware of more, there is more to become aware of. So it's an ongoing process. It's a never-ending cycle, and it's beautiful in its simplicity like that. But what that does is, the more that you become aware, the more your awareness expands, the more you are able to tap into your own unlimited potential. And we all have this beautiful, unlimited potential within us for anything, to achieve anything we want. And what that does is it allows us to tap into our potential, which opens up a world of opportunity. And crucially, in this case, possibility. When you are coming from a place of full awareness, expanded awareness, you are experiencing life on a new level, and you are able to access more of your unlimited potential, which in turn gives you access to more opportunities present themselves to you, as if by magic. And what that does is it shows you and it allows you to know deep down that anything is possible, and you will be much better prepared and much better, you have a much better approach to what you want to achieve from this place, with the expanded awareness and accessing more of your potential. and taking advantage, not taking advantage, but taking on those opportunities, making the most of those opportunities, because anything is possible when you come from that place, when you live from that place, and you experience life from that place. And it's just such a wonderful experience and a wonderful feeling when you are there and when you are living in that way. And it's just amazing. There are no more superlatives that I can think of that adequately explain how it feels. And it's kind of where this whole idea for this video came from, is the fact that I just want for everyone watching to know that whatever you think is impossible right now is possible for you. Not only is it possible for you, but if you expand your awareness and you are presented with those opportunities and you just believe in yourself and your potential and your capability and your ability to succeed and achieve everything you want to achieve, the possibilities are endless. They really are. And anything is possible. You can do, be, and have anything you can ever possibly dream of. Because from a place of expanded awareness is where greatness comes. And it's where amazing things happen. And it's where flow comes from. When you have extended awareness and you have that expanded awareness and that you're living from a state of increased potential, you're accessing more of your potential and the opportunities are flooding towards you and you are surrounding yourself with possibility. That's where flow is. That's where the flow goes. And when you are in flow, life becomes so much easier. Everything just seems to happen so much quicker, so much more effortlessly. And it's from that place that wonderful things happen, that you achieve magnificent things. And you can really make a change. You can really make a difference, not only to yourself, not only to those people that you care about most around you, but to the world at large, to the wider world, to the society you live in, to the community you live in that you're a part of, to the country you're in, and to the world. And you can just make such a difference because you are living in such an expansive way that there is nothing that is impossible. Now, I realize that that's going to sound kind of hokey to a lot of people, so I'm prepared for that. So what I want you to do, I've got a little exercise, a little challenge, if you like, that I want to leave you with, and it's a very simple one. I just want you to think of one thing right now that seems impossible. Now, when I say impossible, I want to give this some clarity because I know there are some smart asses out there who, yeah, I'm one of them. You don't get me wrong, you want to see some of the things I put on other people's videos. But honestly, when I say impossible, going to the moon is not impossible because it is very, very possible that we'll get back there at some point. And going to the moon for you may seem impossible, which is fair enough, but given the right set of circumstances, given the right training, the right practices, and the right mental approach, there's nothing to say that in 20, 30, 40 years' time, if you're still around, that it won't be commonplace. That's the beauty of development. That's the beauty of progress as human beings, is the fact that no one back in the 60s would ever dream that the computers they were using to send people into space that had to be contained in their own room, let's not forget, people were carrying, devices that had more computing power than that in their pocket. And some of them are tiny things, aren't they? So, yeah. So let's not rule anything out. But I want you to be as genuine as you can with this and think of something that you really want to achieve in your life that you're thinking or currently believing to be impossible. And there are two choices here, two ways to do this. The first way is the way that I do that. do this. And that is the fact that instead of thinking of it as impossible, think of it as a little bit challenging. So instead of seeing something as being impossible, think of it as a challenge. And then ask yourself, okay, so that's a bit of a challenge. What do I do though? So what can I do today that will start me out on that journey? Because remember what I said about how I approach things. I see them, if something comes into my world and comes into my life and is a potential obstacle or problem, I will approach it as a challenge. It's never impossible. It's always possible, but it's just a challenge, it may be. And the way I do it is that I see it as a challenge, and then I ask myself that question, okay, so this is challenging. What can I do about it? What can I do to overcome it? What can I do to break through it? Right? And you will see that you will automatically start to flow with ideas after practice. It takes a bit of practice, like anything in personal development, any exercise you're given. It takes practice to do it. So it may not happen first thing for you, first time around, but keep going and it certainly will come. So when you've done that, it's a case of, okay, so yeah, it's a challenge, this is what I would do. And show up to it. Just show up fully to it, just for a couple of days. Just show up fully. See it as a challenge and say, right, okay, so this is a bit of a challenge, so, but how do I break through it? How do I get through it? How do I get around it? How can I overcome it? What can I do to get through it and carry on my journey? And then just respond to what shows up. Take the little action, take the daily action towards breaking through that challenge or overcoming that obstacle. And then just respond. If something shows up and gets in the way, skirt it, go around it, go over it, go under it. Again, see it as a challenge. It doesn't make things impossible, it's just a little bit challenging. And the second way is a little bit from left field, but I found it works too, for me and for a few other people I've shared this with. And that is the fact that something that you think is currently impossible. Now, impossible for you, right? So think of, and these can be people you know, or these can be people you have heard of. So it could be via word of mouth, it could be via YouTube, it could be via the internet, it could be via books or autobiographies of people who have achieved what you want to achieve, right? And see, just so that anything that gives you the idea, that anything that breaks that deadlock of you thinking, oh, this is impossible for me, just think of at least 3 people. They can be people you know, people who are from history, people who are in the here and now but you don't know but you've heard of or you've read about achieving success in that area. And then just anything you can to break that deadlock and just get rid of that impossible and just think, well, okay, they did it. What did they do? And what would my version of that look like? Okay, so it may be down to resources. It may be down to resources. So if somebody with a boat ton of money broke through their obstacle and achieved their success, and you don't necessarily have a lot of money, then you can always ask yourself the scaled down question, which is, okay, so they did it by paying for it. What would my version of that look like? So how could I do that with no money, but instead of resources, I have used my resourcefulness? Okay, because you have this wonderful computer in our head, which very few of us know how to use properly. At the end of the day, that's the one thing about the brain that I will say, is the fact that it's massively powerful. It's incredibly powerful. It's often compared to the most powerful of supercomputers, and yet it doesn't come with a manual. So, with that said, take on that challenge. Take on that challenge I've just set you. Think of something that to you up until now has seemed impossible, and either switch it around and find examples of people who have achieved success in spite of that challenge, or have broken through that obstacle and gotten around it and achieved their successes. and use them as an example that it can be done. Okay? And then ask yourself, okay, it can be done. How can I do it? And see what comes up. And again, show up and respond to what shows up. So what's coming in is important. It's trying to tell you something and point you in the right direction. Because once you switch it, once you flick it to become from impossible to possible, your approach, your psyche will change, and you will start to think of, and you'll start to become a magnet for all the resources that you need, all the resourcefulness that you need, chance encounters. You meet people on the street, you'll hear of things, you'll see an autobiography on, advertised on Amazon, which shows the journey of someone who's achieved the success that you want to achieve. All kind of weird things will happen that happen because you've made that psychological switch from impossible to possible. Okay, and you've asked yourself, so how can I do this? How can I achieve this? And the second way, as I've said, is the way that I tend to do it, which is just to go head on, which is, okay, that's not impossible. It's a challenge. I'm up for a challenge. How can I get through it? How can I get around it? How can I achieve it? How can I overcome it and carry on my journey? And then again, show up and respond to what shows up along the way, and then just take it one step at a time. That's it for today. I really hope you've enjoyed the video. Like I said, it was one of those inspirational things that came to me this morning. I thought, I've just got to talk about that. I have to do that. I have to do a video on possibility. So it's just one of those things today. I will be back tomorrow with another video. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Please drop us a like, leave us a comment if there's anything you'd like us to talk about, particularly on the channel. And yeah, subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell for when we release new content so you don't miss out. And I will see you very soon in the next one.